Hyvää huomenta.
Good morning, all seminar participants. Welcome to the Art, Culture and Diverse Finland seminar to this Arts Promotion Center Finland. My name is Maija and I work in the Ministry of Education and Culture. Maija Lummeoja. It's so nice that we were able to organize this seminar here on site, and also all remote participants have been able to log in. There are altogether 220 plus persons participating today. Welcome also on behalf of the Arts Promotion Center Finland. My name is Maikki. I'm a regional artist and I'm here assisting Maija today. At this seminar, this morning will be simultaneously interpreted so that you can follow the program in English on channel 1 and in the Finnish language on channel 2. And all remote participants behind the screen can find the icon of headphones, and through that you can click on the correct channel and language that you want to listen to. In social media, we can use the hashtag taiteen moninaisuus. In Finnish, can also be seen here on the walls on the green paper. In this seminar, we will be using the Safer Space guidelines. You have been distributed those beforehand, so we won't go through them in detail at this point. But if you want to discuss any themes related to these Safer Space guidelines, get in touch with us organizers. I feel that all the organizers could stand up at this point so everybody can see who we're talking about. Kaisa. Antti is in the back as well. Can you wave your hand? And also everybody you saw at the registration desk. Noora, yes, she's here as well. Very well. Then we have the opening words of the seminar, Riitta Kaivosoja, Director General from the Department for Cultural and Art Policy at the Ministry of Education and Culture. Welcome. Dear seminar participants, on behalf of the Ministry of Education and Culture, I have the pleasure to deliver opening words and welcome you to the seminar on here in the seminar hall of the Arts Promotion Center in Helsinki, as well as through remote connections. The diversification of Finland's population base, and through that the diversification of the Finnish society, is one of the great changes that we have faced in the last 2 to 3 decades. It is clear that this change is visible in the society in various ways, and naturally it also touches upon cultural politics. We have recognized this change on many levels and it has affected our work. However, there are needs for development arising from this change that we have not been able to fulfill. Equality, non-discrimination, and the language and cultural rights of different groups have been taken into account in the Finnish constitution well. Actions have also been taken to enhance equality in cultural politics. The first immigration policies were published already in 2003. After that, several working groups have been carrying out the work further. Interaction with various actors and partners who represent diversity has been increased. Also, practical steps have been taken. Money has been budgeted for supporting multiculturalism and work against racism. This was previously distributed by the Ministry for Education and Culture and later on by Arts Promotion Center Finland. The predecessor of the Arts Promotion Center, the Arts Council of Finland, distributed allowances for art projects promoting multiculturalism. Multiculturalism has also been considered in the Arts Council structure, where National Council for Diversity in the Arts functions. Multiculturalism was an integral part of the Culture for All service, which was founded in 2003 in the Finnish National Gallery. These activities were later organized into an association that is supported through a government grant distributed by the Ministry for Education and Culture. Already in 1995, the Ministry for Education and Culture gave the Helsinki City Library a task to maintain a multi-language library. Since 2013, the ministry has also financed a Russian language library as part of the Espoo City Library. Research from the perspective of cultural policy has also been conducted into migration and multiculturalism. So far, we have produced individual solutions and steps in the new situations and challenges we faced as the society is becoming more diverse. The working group that finalized its report in January about diversity and migration from the perspective of cultural policy wants to change how we think and do things. The working group believes that ethnic, lingual and cultural diversification must be mainstreamed and considered in all art and cultural policy planning and decision-making. Positive action and individual solutions are acceptable if they help us reaching our targets. The decision-making processes of art and culture should be developed in such a way that they mirror the changed population structures in Finland. The idea of mainstreaming is correct, I believe. However, we must remember that there are other issues to be mainstreamed nowadays. Sustainable development as one example, and this makes promoting such good targets also very challenging. Labor force is limited in all organizations, and we need people to do the work if we mean to make progress with themes and targets that are permeable. The proposals by the working group in regards to mainstreaming cultural diversity are realistic in that it is possible to promote them and to implement them in practice. These proposals include consulting people with foreign backgrounds, specifically when preparing decisions that apply to them, including them in the decision-making bodies of art and culture, and demanding organizations to draw up an equality plan and monitor its implementation. Also organizing equality training and benefiting from diversity experts when developing organizations are among the proposals which I see be put into practice. A second proposal entity by the working group that I would like to comment on is related to cultural funding. Funding of art and culture should be developed strategically, considering the growing societal significance of cultural diversity in a way that it makes an impact cross-sectionally in the funding systems. We should encourage other funding providers of art and culture to consider the diversity of the society in their actions. I'm sure you all know that the funding situation of art and culture is difficult. This is particularly due to the fact that more than half of the funding in our sector has traditionally come from the profits of the gambling industry. Now the gambling income, and with that the funding for the beneficiaries, has declined, and this decline could not be compensated in full. First of all, the funding goes to the ministries, and then after a decision-making projects to the different actors in the arts and culture sector. And like I said, this decline could not yet be compensated in full. On Tuesday morning, we had an information event for the whole arts and culture sector at the ministry regarding these cuts. And this year we've had to cut, compared to last year, about 5.5 million euros. And next year the need for the cuts is about 18 million, which has been in the media. And in 2023, 9 million more. The cuts in 2023 would be according to the framework decision from last spring compared to 2020. Government grant would be 32, the cut would be 32 million euros. So this is the entity that we're talking about. The working group has realistically identified the funding situation of the cultural sector and has not given its proposals with the assumption that implementing them would always or necessarily require new funding. A lot can be done within the current or even decreasing funding framework. Many of the working group's proposals are related to changing our thinking and working methods, partly also about prioritizing. But naturally, some of the proposals require also financial investments. The working group's proposals apply to the state as well as to the municipalities and different actors who are active in the sector. From the perspective of the state, the key tools how to promote the proposals of the working group include, in addition to funding, strategic work and information guidance, results and target guidance, government aid policies and straight contribution policies.
Both the strategy of the Ministry of Education and Culture and the current government program provide the basis for strategic work. The Ministry strategy describes the direction of a long-term development, and the government programs include the priorities of that government and concrete cultural policy measures. The current strategy for cultural policy was completed about 5 years ago, and it will run until 2025. It identifies increased immigration and cultural diversity as one of the important issues related to the change in the operating environment. The strategy also promised to draw up guidelines for taking cultural diversity into account in cultural policy. And that work has now been done well. And we all have at our disposal to support us. There's something that has been listening to the diverse voices from the field. And this is the final report of the Art, Culture and Diverse Finland Working Group. And next time these strategies are updated or renewed, then the aforementioned mainstreaming will probably be needed to be reflected more strongly there. And also the theme will certainly be strongly present in other programming as well. Currently, amongst others, Finland's first cultural heritage strategy is being included in the government program, and it's being currently prepared. And cultural diversity is one of the 5 topics of discussion in this strategy work. The Ministry holds annual performance negotiations or target discussions with the cultural administration agencies and national cultural institutions. And there, the promotion of cultural diversity and equality will be taken into account in a more coherent and systematic way in the future. And the reform of state contribution practices for museums and performing arts, the reform has been taking place, and also the laws governing this also aims at cultural diversity and wide accessibility of services. State subsidy practices will be examined in the future in the spirit of the working group's proposals, and research and monitoring of the implementation of cultural diversity and equality are also important. And it seems that we will be able to achieve this through the development of a concrete instrument at the Cultural Policy Research Centre Kupore. And in addition to our own diversity work in the arts and culture, I would also like to highlight the importance of diverse cross-sectorial cooperation. Many of you have also been preparing a joint public administration strategy between the state administration and the municipalities, which will provide a framework for public administration reform. And this will actually be focusing on until 2030. And the economic, ecological and social sustainability and the use of digitalization and international forums are strong foundations in this reform process. In this context, it is also noteworthy that the first objective of this strategy has been to take diversity into account as factor in strengthening equality. According to this, the administration strengthens equality by recognizing the diversity of people's lives, and it takes into account the needs of different and multilingual people and also builds a sense of belonging and justice. We have also contributed to the government's report published in June on the need to reform promotion of integration. And the report forms the comprehensive program of measures required by the Finnish Parliament for the reform needs of integration measures and also other necessary reforms. And the report highlights the increasing impact of artistic and cultural activities on integration and how these activities lower the threshold for immigrants to participate in the Finnish society. Library and other cultural services also provide ways to support one's own language and culture in interaction with the surrounding society. One of the key measures in the report are the guidelines and actions of the final report of the Working Group on Diversity to promote cultural diversity and equality in the cultural field. In addition, we also cooperate extensively with the Ministry of Justice, for example, in the preparation of the Action Plan Against Racism and Good Population Relations, and also we participate in the work of the Advisory Council on Ethnic Relationships set up by the government. And the term office of the Advisory Board, the board started at the end of last year, but the term will continue until the end of 2024. Our ministry also participates in the preparation of the policy of the metropolitan area between the state and Helsinki, Espoo and Vantaa. It examines, among other things, social sustainability and the means by which exclusion can be prevented. And this cross-sectoral work opens up new avenues for all of us to further the goals that we have in our own sectors and even carrying out very concrete actions to build new networks and important meeting places. Dear listeners, I will return at the end of this speech to the final report of the Working Group. In it, the Working Group proposes that the Ministry of Education and Culture will draw up an action plan that takes into account the Working Group's guidelines and proposed measures. We are now working on this, and we intend now to identify and include the diversity agenda actions that could concretely promote and support the realization of diversity in the cultural sector, and that within the framework of our strategy for 2022 up to 2025. In my view, this seminar here has two functions. Firstly, it is intended as a closing event for this great working group that carried out the work last year, and also for all the stakeholders who took part in that work. And secondly, this is an opportunity to continue the dialogue launched last year and also to continue the Ministry's further preparation of the action programme. And I would like to sincerely thank the chair of the working group, Pasi Saukkonen, and also all the members of the working group and all of those who were involved. Thank you for your contribution into process the preparing of the final report and also the timely guidelines and proposals for action in it. I really want to express my appreciation and thanks to the Center Promotion of the Arts, which together with the Ministry has participated in the preparation of the content of the seminar and also various practical arrangements. You all have been carrying out valuable work here. And of course, we are all very happy that we are able to meet on site, face-to-face here, finally. And I do wish that this work in this seminar here today will be taking things forward. I'm also very happy that I can stay throughout the morning here, at least partially. I'll be here myself to listen to Pasi Saukkonen's vision based on the research, knowledge and data of the future and the voice of the arts and culture field, and also the roundtable discussion on current issues on diversity. And in the afternoon, those who participate that will get their hands on clay, as we say, to test the dialogue tool and to discuss the cultural heritage strategy workshop here on site or virtually. Diversity agents and educators bring important expertise to this work. The expertise of these individuals will increasingly be used by art and cultural institutions and other actors in this field to develop their own work communities and the contents in their future more diverse. After saying thank you to all, I would like to briefly state that as for this sector, art and culture, when you think of the whole sector, it is so extensive and diverse as it is. So you have the state structures, agencies, institutions, and you have the national institutes and Arts Promotion Center, and of course the ministry as well. But you also have the very extensive municipal sector. Your municipalities are very big funders, or they finance a lot culture more than the state. And all organizations, whether they are associations or foundations, whether they are listed companies or action, things like that. But in all, when we want to have a change in the society here in Finland, in this bigger picture, it is a demanding task. And all the actions to promote this are not always the traditional actions carried out by the Finnish state when we talk about legislation or when we talk about financial decisions. Of course, financing, I do understand that we all understand that we need to have financial decisions and they play an important role in enabling operations. But I would say this is about much more. It is not just by one party, but it's about all the stakeholders, the work by all of us here, and our daily work is here at stake today and the future. But I wish you all a very fruitful seminar. Thank you.
Kiitos Riitta.
Thank you, Riitta Kaivosoja, for these opening words. We are talking about the working group's final report, which looks like this. I'm sure many of you have printed this report for yourselves, but these copies can also be found in the lobby. Can I ask Pasi Saukkonen, who is the chairman of the working group and a senior researcher, now to come up on stage? The floor is yours. Thank you, Maikki, and good morning to everyone on my behalf as well, for those here on site as well as those attending remotely. My name is Pasi Saukkonen, and I'm a political researcher. My background, I work for the city of Helsinki with questions and themes, research to do with immigrants and people with foreign backgrounds. I have also background in the research in the area of arts and culture. And I have been involved in several studies that are related to today's topic. In my presentation today, I will not extensively describe the contents of this final report. It's just not possible because we dealt with 8 themes. There are several dozens of proposals. And like Riitta Kaivosoja mentioned, the field, the sector of arts and culture is so extensive that very quickly different steps and measures become or receive a different form, different depending on the specific area. So this is the reason why I'm going to be providing some background to this topic, what I believe as a researcher this is all about, and what is the larger context that this working group's work and the final report is connected to. And finally, I will talk a bit about the future, what type of questions this, from the perspective of this theme, it will raise. And regarding the beginning and the end, I would like to say that this is not an official contribution from the working group. This is my personal contribution, but of course I will attempt to mirror the spirit that was that existed within the working group. And I will give you some examples, some highlights from the report of the working group regarding its different proposals and suggestions. The first thing that we should always talk about if we want to understand the atmosphere, the discussions and the measures that have been taken in Europe in cultural policy as well as in a wider sense in politics, it's good to start with the fact that Europe was in a state of shock in the early 90s. Large numbers of foreign-born people arrived in several countries after the Second World War. But almost in all countries, it took a long time before this was publicly acknowledged and accepted that these changes are real and they are here to stay, and they will forever have an effect on what a Dutch person or Dutch society and French society are like. And partly we are still living in this illusion. If we look at what different measures were taken then in the 90s that reflected the reality and acknowledging the reality, we also must admit that the sector of art and culture and international cultural policy was not in the forefront of this development. It is understandable to a degree when a person moves from one country to another. Probably the very first questions that come up have to do with income and housing and education, children's education and schooling, health, and so forth. As important as art and culture is, it's perhaps not one of the first questions that people think about or expect. And also the arts and culture sector was not very enthusiastic about getting involved. However, what is interesting and also negative is that from many countries we can see that the arts and culture sector actors were also unwilling to step up and get active for many reasons, as many of my publications explain. One reason was that people were in general against the public sphere saying what should happen in the arts and culture sector. On the other hand, people wanted to hold on to certain national concepts and traditions. Then if we look at Finland in this context, I have to say that Finland deserves some credit. When wider immigration started increasing in the early 1990s, in this country we didn't really consider, even for a little while, that this immigration would not be permanent and this change wouldn't be permanent. Different measures were taken rather quickly on the state level as well as on a regional level. The first guidelines about inclusion came out, and this topic was taken quite seriously, this development. Also, Finnish art and cultural policy was perhaps not in the forefront exactly, but was following suit quite quickly. The first guidelines regarding cultural policy and cultural diversity regarding immigration came out quite early, in the early 2000s. And after that, the topic has been discussed and made public in many ways. And like Riitta Kaivosoja mentioned, this has not just been talk. Different centers have been established and opportunities have been created, different institutions. There have been funding channels founded and so on. However, if we dive deeper into our analysis, many of the things that were done were mostly small scale and quite fragmented, and quite often temporary, based on projects, for example. So a lot was done, a lot of work, but in many ways things were left unfinished. And for that reason, some years have passed without any significant new initiatives. And like Riitta Kaivosoja mentioned, the cultural policy strategy mentions that new guidelines should be drawn up, and for this work, for this purpose, this working group was founded. Next, I would like to highlight a few points from the report. I will open up them all at the same time here on the slide. I'm still repeating this. Finland is changing, and the change in the Finnish society must be taken seriously. And like Riitta Kaivosoja mentioned, we have to take this into account in a mainstreamed manner. It can no longer be something special that is done as an extra measure. It has to be in an integral part of the Finnish arts and cultural policy. Taking this into account does not happen on its own. It requires work, which requires certain type of knowledge, know-how, skills, and expertise that still has to be acquired and further developed. It is clear that people who move to Finland have to be more included as participants in the Finnish arts and cultural life, whether as an audience or as active actors. And from international experience, we know that places that are difficult to gain access to, but where it is meaningful, very significant to get involved in, are those bodies and organizations where power is exercised, where different choices are being made about what is to be done and who is allowed to do what, where decisions are taken. Funding is a second theme, another theme that we deal with in the report. Funding is naturally important, and again, as Riitta Kaivosoja stated, according to the report, diversity should be taken into account in a strategic, extensive way in the funding systems as the funding systems are being renewed. In practice, this is just a general guideline or guideline because the different areas in the sector are very different and different areas have different needs. And in particular here, the principle one size does not fit all is very accurate. However, we need to pay attention to the fact that the different needs arising from diversity they are everywhere, but they are also opportunities. Again, an international example and partly also a Finnish example already. When we work on these things, they absolutely mean new opportunities for creative work in Finland. The last point on the slide that you can now see deals with the government budget, and I will return to that topic in a moment in more detail. One theme entity that, of course, is related to this topic or theme, as it is connected to almost anything when we talk about inclusion and migration, is employment and facilitating, promoting employment in different means. Of course, we are concerned, the working group expressed concerns about the fact that so many vocationally persons who have vocational training and education are not able to exercise and realize their creativity in Finland in the way that they should be able to. In a country like Finland, where a certain homogeneous tradition is fairly strong, unified culture, we perhaps are not the best at being that sensitive on a nation's level or cultural level or individual level to see diversity as something that is adding to the richness of life, people speaking different languages, for example, other languages than English, that may open up completely new perspectives, new opportunities that people have experienced from many different cultural traditions in disciplines of art that we're not as familiar with, that this could be seen as a benefit, something that enriches the Finnish cultural life. Of course, when someone moves to Finland, it is understandable that learning Finnish or Swedish or their knowledge of this language, first of all, is very limited, if not non-existent. And many other areas of knowledge, how to operate in the Finnish society, should be developed during the first years in particular. The actors in the arts and cultural sector can carry out their own work and be vigilant for this need and aim to offer opportunities for people to learn the language and get involved in the Finnish society in the area of language and learning and working. Certainly, there is also discrimination and even racism also in the sector of arts and culture. Many very conclusive reports, studies have been conducted in Finland as in other countries that not everyone has the same possibilities to participate, to find employment, even though this, based on the equality principle, should so be. We need to acknowledge this. This is an opportunity. It's not an accusation, but it is an acknowledgement of the fact that this is probably the case also in this sector. And this possibility is something we need to take seriously, and every actor should monitor and evaluate their ways of doing things, their thinking. Are there some obstacles, some tools that prevent people from being on the same line, on the same starting point as they should be in a democratic Finnish society? Let's move on to the last slide regarding the different guidelines and proposals that the working group makes in its report. One of them, well, if we look at this entity, I mentioned earlier that the sector of arts and culture is very wide, very large, and it's difficult to say anything very general about it with it actually describing the reality in everyday life very precisely. But the working group's work was challenging but also highly interesting because there are so many different perspectives into these themes. One being that artists, the professionals in this sector, should be as equal to get involved in creative work as anyone else. How people living in Finland, independent from their own backgrounds, are able to, when so willing, participate in art and culture, especially when these activities and operations are being funded by taxpayer money, that they, of course, themselves are as well. And the second point is that when Finland is changing, making art and culture, the contents of it should also change. International mobility, so-called globalization in general, impact the situation, making Finland part of the world more and more, but also the other way around. The world is in Finland more and more. And this should also be visible in the type of art and cultural events are being organized in Finland. And if it is difficult to demand a complete societal reflection from everybody in the literature or in theater productions, but if many minority groups are almost never visible in any of these productions or pieces of work, that is very unfortunate. And we do know from other Nordic countries that this is a very real issue, very real problem. In order to move forward from these, one way is that the actors in the art and cultural sector diversify in themselves, those people who work in orchestras, museums, theaters, that the staff, the personnel better reflect the diverse Finland that we have around us. Finally, this was all about the actual report of the working group. It is available in this event, and I encourage you to get to know it. I've only been able to scratch it a little bit in my presentation now, but now I will think about the future a little bit again. Riitta Kaivosoja already pointed out the difficult situation where, in particular this week, the arts and culture sector has ended up in a very regrettable situation. And in that sense, this week is not the best possible week to ponder about the future in relation to our possibilities to do things differently. I heard from some place recently that people and animals react to crisis in 3 different ways. Either they attack, they run, or they freeze. And quite often it is the third option, freezing. And anyone, if we imagine prey and the one that is attacking, by freezing, you don't necessarily get the best results. So what I wish for to happen in the arts and cultural sector, and unfortunately what can be expected in the future, shouldn't lead to a situation where we hang on to the status quo, to what we have had, and anything that requires us to renew ourselves and what we do is left for better times. I believe this risk is real. This diagram on the background shows us the population development in the Helsinki region, also the projection for the future in regards to population with a foreign mother tongue until the year 2035, which means that also people, also including people who were born in Finland but have a foreign mother tongue, will more than double in the Helsinki region in less than 20 years. In percentage, their portion of the population is also growing even faster in the younger generations, younger age groups. So far, this projection for the population with a foreign mother tongue I was not myself involved in making this, but it has been otherwise very credible and trustworthy, but it has always been a little less than what the reality ended up being. So we can expect that the numbers here are slightly lower than they actually will be. And this is something to be taken seriously. This exists only, this protection, for the Helsinki region, and of course this is the region that is quite unique when it comes to these types of developments and questions, but of course this does apply to the whole of Finland and also other cities like Turku, Tampere, Vaasa, for example, just to mention a few. So once again, I'm highlighting one of our proposals where the work has luckily already begun. We wished that this working group's work will not gather dust somewhere on a shelf, but that it actually leads to real measures and steps. And for this reason, we proposed that the ministry would start a work on formulating these measures, and thank you to the ministry, the work started almost immediately. I will finish my presentation with a few questions, and I would like to emphasize that these are my personal questions that I personally find very significant. These are the big questions that we need to be able to solve. Riitta Kaivosoja talked about in an absolutely correct manner the things that have been realized in inclusion policies and arts and culture sectoral policies were extra services, special services, things created specifically for migrants or people with foreign backgrounds. In that sense, this is in the past. It is important that things are being mainstreamed. No actor, institution in arts and cultural sector should, in the first moment at least, state that this has nothing to do with us. Mainstreaming, the need for mainstreaming is clear, and however we know from other countries that we do still need some special services that, for example, lower the threshold for people to gain access to cultural services, for example, for those groups where, for example, a concert of classical music is very far away from their spectrum of opportunities on a daily basis. A second thing that I already mentioned was enhancing participation of those born abroad. And I'd like to emphasize that based on international experience, a special question is, how do those born in Finland, children of migrants, how are they able to participate as artists or as part of the audience in the sector of arts and culture? And finally, put into slightly different words, how the idea of Finnish art can be renewed and reconceptualized so that it includes all the people living in Finland and including all the creative work that is being created in this country. Thank you.
Kiitos Pasi Saukkonen.
Thank you very much, Pasi Saukkonen. Now it's time for comments. Please, I will ask now, so one after the other. So first, Paula Tuominen here, who is Director of Arts and Promotion Center. And after that, right after her, we have Mikla Altskod's founder and director Söderberg. So please, Paula first. A very good morning to all of you, also on behalf of the Arts Promotion Center. Thank you for Riitta Kaivosoja and thank you, Pasi Saukkonen, both for your speeches. Really, I have a million thoughts on my mind based on those. But just perhaps, since I have such a short time, for me, I will focus on attitudes and funding and also on what here at Taike and Promotion Center we have done so far. And first thought, when I heard the two other speakers, this is a lot about attitudes. It is about curiosity that we all have as human beings. It is curiosity towards other people. And also I have this thought that I would say a very core thing for development in every society is cultural exchange. That has happened throughout the millennia, so that there is no longer any Finnish art or Finnish culture if we did not have already for decades a cultural exchange taking place all the time. This can be seen in our language. Thinking of my father, who is from Helsinki, he spoke to me the Helsinki accent or slang when I was a child, saying different words to me. So it was a language, a local language, which also represents multicultural background because it was a mixture of Swedish and Russian languages. And today the language spoken here in Helsinki, and it is a language development based on Russian, Arabic, Swedish, English. There is a diversity of languages behind the current Helsinki language, and I find that to be a very positive thing. And all in all, this cultural exchange, it is also about something that is absolutely vital and necessary. We need to be learning from each other on a permanent basis. If we don't have that, this country will not at all develop. On the other hand, I must say a few points about mainstreaming. Yes, it is vital and absolutely important that we have it. It is actually normal, it is conventional, everyday life that we have a diverse country, which has always been like it, but today with globalization we are even more diverse than before. So diversity is not always visible in the structures that we have in place in the country, and therefore we need action, we need measures. For instance, when I think of artists, there was a reference made here that do we need a separate decision or solution for diverse artists? But I would say that artists have been always considered to be special persons, and there has been some separate decisions or solutions for artists in the past already. Today, there are grants given for artists for their work, and this is my personal mission, I would say, but I would think that artists who have had higher education, you have to pay wages and not grants, because that is a separate solution. Therefore, when we talk about separate solutions or decisions, we need to create another special system. For instance, because there is no wages paid in the arts sector, you have to create separate pension schemes for artists to compensate for the fact that the artists don't have salary work. You need to compensate for that. And since we have foreign-born artists in Finland who work here in Finland, and I would say it's even more difficult for foreign-born artists to find any paid work compared to a person who knows how to operate and navigate in the Finnish system because they were born into the society and they know how to operate here. Therefore, I would say that we do need certain specific solutions or decisions for a while, but it's very important that in our daily lives we take into account diversity in Finland. Then about funding. As for paying wages for artists, I said that is a core point. But also, if we think of funding of communities, we need to be thinking, are the structures in place for funding something that presents incentives? Because nothing happens automatically by itself. So does the system provide an incentive and criteria for evaluation so that there is this incentive for change? Then a few words about the work of our center, Arts Promotion Center. The core for us is the livelihood of the artists. We want to promote that. And it is also about the community out there, the artistic community, to support their work. Of course, we do have this wish that we would, in our work, make things so that they're part of our everyday life. When we do any reform, our objective is that all the reforms and structures in place are something that really takes into account automatically the changes in the arts itself, so I mean within the sector, and also it's more porous, it's more vivid, and also there are less and less boundaries between the different arts, but that it is a living thing, and that is an automated thing in a way for the younger generation, so that it is really amongst them that this change takes place. But on the other hand, I would say that these wishes that we have expressed go hand in hand with the proposals made by this work group to mainstream cultural policy, and we want to do the practical work. We have following examples to do that work. We train employees of Taike, so our promotion center, and also experts who have positions of trust so that they understand the questions related to cultural diversity. So we provide training. We also target expert resources to promote career of artists with multiple diverse backgrounds and also promote the access to professional networks. We also implement different counseling events, advisory events in the art scene. We are further developing this advisory work. And early November, there will be the first diversity cultural expert, Koko Hubara, who will start as the first employee of this. In this, Koko Hubara is also moderator here for the roundtable. So we think that Koko Hubara has one of the tasks, and that task could be going through the report of the work group and then make proposals for us, for Taike. What can Taike do in practice as for these topics? How can we in practice really implement and promote these things? And here in Taike, currently, we have 3 provincial artists, and 2 of them represent minority cultures. And so 3 provincial artists, and their work is about these questions of diversity in culture as well. One way to promote this topic is that we always try to take into account when appointing the regional committees of art that we have a diverse representation. It's not our decision, so it's the Art Council that decides, but in practice there are our experts from Taike who build the list of the individuals in the committees so that we have balanced gender balance. We also have balance between the different genres of art, and that we also have cultural diversity presented. We are rather successful in this, but there are still certain committees where they have had a hard time finding experts, like from the eastern part of Finland. Where can they get diversity and sufficient diversity in certain regions? Furthermore, here at Taike, the promotional cultural diversity is linked throughout this year to our sustainable development promotion, because this is one part of sustainable development to us. And we have, with fellow agencies like the Finnish Heritage Agency, Fortress of Suomenlinna, and National Archive, we have recognized together more sustainable operational culture, and therefore diversity questions are brought up automatically in this regard. And part of the work, we have now observed that we have points for further development, and they go hand in hand, are very similar with the points pointed out in the final report. And one thing that we would like to improve our operations at Taike is that we need to now develop the good customer experience at Taike by foreign-born artists. We have so far had some challenges getting application forms in English because our IT systems are old-fashioned. So we can't translate, we can't really have them as flexible as we want to have them. But we have an upcoming system for state grants. It's now being built, and we should have that introduced in 2024. And then we have great opportunities to do our core work. Whenever we have artists applying for grants and funding, in that case, we have the customer experience that will be better when that system is in place. And certainly, another point of development is the collaboration between agencies, authorities. For instance, collaboration with Finnish Immigration Service. That is an idea. We are not yet far with this point, but the objective is to recognize and identify the profession of an artist and its special features related to this profession. So we have expressed our wishes. We want to have more of a better position for artists and better access to services, better than today. And I want to remind you all that the key to everything is that people are curious, and it's all about the attitude. So we need to educate people here. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Of course, it's great to be here amongst you, but good morning, everyone remotely joining us. Of course, the real magic comes from people being in the same place. So my name is Ceyda Berksoy-Derbulum. I have been working as an art professional, festival programmer, curator more than 20 years, since 2015 in Finland, and I worked as an expert in this working group who prepared the report. So, well, since I'm an independent art professional who, among other things, studied business and love numbers, before my commentary on today's theme, I feel the need to say a few words concerning the recent manifesto-breaking announcements of budget cuts. Globally, cultural and creative industries, with annual revenue of $2,250 billion, accounts for 3% of the world GDP and employ 29.5 million people, simply 1% of the world's active population. After the Asia-Pacific countries, Europe, being the second biggest economy, generates 32% of the revenues and offers 25% of the jobs globally. The United Nations declared 2021, the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. This was motivated by the fact that human-centric, inclusive development, something the arts and culture we can do, has never been more relevant. Against this background, instead of investing in one of the most rapidly growing sectors worldwide, announcing budget cuts for the arts and culture sector is poor decision-making. So, this being said, let's get back to the topic of today, Diverse Finland. First of all, I'm delighted and honored to be invited to speak to you today and comment on our work. Pasi Saukkonen has introduced the summary and some few recommendations, the Art, Culture and Diverse Finland report. And these policy recommendations that you will see in the report are clear, specific and realistic. They aim to dismantle discrimination and reduce the inequalities of the existing system. The challenges we have been asked to solve and tackle are complex, cannot be solved from one single perspective. We need a collective vision. A vision that is not limited to the expertise of this working group alone. It is not also solvable through a homogeneous Finnish approach, like the one prevailing in the local art scene for many years. Instead, we need a vision conceived and built collectively, inclusively, including everyone. The most importantly, including those the structure has been excluding. For this reason, I would like to start by acknowledging the contribution of the artists and cultural workers who joined us at the workshops and generously shared their lived experiences, The ideas set the ground for our report. And I would like to continue by touching upon the specific task given to our working group to enhance opportunities for persons with a foreign background to engage in professional and other artistic and cultural activities. I am one of those. Therefore, this report is personal. So is everything I will say, personal and political. The diversity and transformation work requires commitment, action, and accountability. Rita Kaivasoja and Paula Toivonen have informed us the Ministry and Taike are committed to transform the current structure. The structure fails to provide equal opportunities for many, especially foreign-born art professionals, concerning employment, artistic and professional growth. As long as foreign-born art professionals are not represented within the decision structures of arts and cultural institutions and among the cultural management elite of this country, we cannot talk about democratic participation. When the art scene is predominantly governed, created and distributed by homogeneous gatekeepers with very few structures to empower the foreign-born population on which this society's economic future depends, we cannot talk about social justice. One of the fundamental values of our society, equality, cannot be taken for granted. I demand action. Sanna Marin Government Action Plan for Gender Equality 2022-23 report states, and I quote here, "The labor market position of women with foreign background is particularly weak. Even with good education and language skills, even after 15 years of living in Finland, they do not attain the employment rate of women with the native background." Just put this into perspective. 45% of women with foreign backgrounds are unemployed in this country. Highly educated, competent women. I demand action. I want to call out to everyone in this room, and also the ones present remotely, who has the power to recruit, invite, and engage with others for artistic work, especially those who identify themselves as women. I want you to remember this paradox. Each time you feel proud of announcing Finland as the country of gender equality, I want you to remember this paradox and reflect sincerely on your own role in building a brick wall in front of another's woman's right to work. Whenever you make a decision between the most competent and most suitable, usually selecting a Finnish person, the one that shares many similarities in thought with you, for the sake of continuing business as usual, rather than being genuinely fair and inclusive. Think about those women. Think of us, who, because of your decisions, have been forced to be economically dependent and stripped from their professional dignity in this country. On behalf of myself and my colleagues and friends, talented, competent, educated, foreign-born women, artists, and cultural professionals, I demand action. I believe in leading by example. In the present circumstances, it is the mandate of the Ministry to guide and inspire the arts and cultural sector and its operators through a good example, show the way. I demand action and accountability from the Ministry of Education and Culture, which, with its report, encourages all arts and cultural institutions of this country to be inclusive. I demand action from everyone to rebuild an arts ecosystem where we all have fair and equal access to the information, resources and opportunities vital to professional fulfillment and full artistic and cultural expression. In my opinion, what lies at the heart of this transformation work is finding answers to the crucial questions in which arts and cultural sector has not engaged for a long time. How do we become relevant for the Finnish society of today? And who is given a chance to contribute to the contemporary narrative of Finnish art? I would like to conclude my comment by taking this opportunity to thank every and each member of this working group who gave me hope for believing in a brighter future. I was the only non-Finnish speaking member of the working group who has been provided an interpreter. I believe that this is going to be a norm from now on for other gatherings. And I would like to say the last words: inclusion starts with action and flourishes with accountability. Thank you.
Kiitos.
Thank you, Paula and Seida, for these words. Now everyone else has the opportunity to comment, both here in this hall as well as remotely. Noora is going to come up here to read through some of the comments and questions from the remote participants, and Kaisa is going to pass around the microphone. Don't say anything before the microphone is right in front of you, so that everyone participating remotely can also hear you. Everyone in agreement? No one has anything to comment? This is confusing. Please. Hello, everyone. Anna Danchev is my name. I'm a singer, songwriter, Finnish with migration background, professional in the field of arts, and I represent minorities. I have many different roles in this sector. My comment is very short. I want to personally thank all of you, genuinely thank you for this work and for this text, for your words. You provide me personally with strength to continue my work. Like Seida said in her lovely speech, this is personal. This is a human-based business in that sense that we create art that is based on us humans. So all of these words touch upon one single individual like myself. Thank you. Annalyn Grune here. Hello. Thank you also on my behalf. I have been a member in this working group. It was very interesting work. Well, I was thinking about the cuts. How to move forward, because these cuts are not small or insignificant, and like the rest of the arts and cultural sector in Finland, it's difficult. Even if you were born here, you don't even need to have a foreign-born background. It's a tough sector, tough to get by. So this is a question to all of those who have the answers. What will the effects be on arts and cultural life next year and the year after? And what are the opportunities going to be like for artists to operate in Finland from here on out? Any further comments? What about in the homes, people? Okay, Jaana first.
And I'm the managing director of Globe Art Point, and I sincerely want to thank Jada Berg-Sodenblom for asking and telling us to take the action. Let's take the burden out from her shoulder and work with her, and let's do it.
Raho, I'm an artist and researcher. I had the pleasure also to work in Global Art Point. I wanted to thank on behalf of myself, of all the members of the working group in Ministry, which gave me and many of my artist colleagues and cultural workers in Finland hope. I just want to ask one simple question. When realistically we will see the action plan to be implemented? When is it ready, and when can we see that it will be taken into consideration in the actions in the institutions? Thank you.
In the back somewhere, there was a hand raised.
Chairman of African Civil Society in Finland. I also belong to other organizations like a chair as well as board member. I happen to have been in diversity in different organizations, and I've seen different walks of people. Yeah, I was so delighted to follow the lecture, especially based on the research. That finding was really rich and realistic, especially as someone talking from the background of academia as well. Which I will get the slides after that to diversity, not only for personal understanding, but also as a matter of education, because it was really rich and realistic. So the question I just want to find out is that after conscious of the fact that Finland will no longer be as before, as a result of migration and settlement, bringing together their own culture and diversity in order to sandwich it with the already exist culture in Finland. If we grow now towards a different atmosphere whereby we have international Finland, might be Helsinki being the gateway of internationalization, the question I want to ask is that if we need other people to really make decisions so that they can talk from their different background and help decision makers to actually understand the reality and how to make precious decisions in selection, don't we feel that maybe we could have representation from different angles? For instance, nobody will live to Middle East and talk better than me from Africa. I will not talk better than somebody from Asia. So why don't we get these representatives so that they can stand, help decision makers that, okay, this is a picture of what we are saying. Through that way, we will help to really see the connotation of diversity in reality, and the practice will be more concrete and with more enthusiasm for collective catharsis. Sorry for talking much, but that's one of the idea of an artist. Sorry.
Kaisa in the back, and then Henry next. Marita Muukkonen, artist at risk, founder and leader. I'd like to comment on a few points. It's wonderful that Taike is going to negotiate with the Finnish Immigration Service. It's important to receive, professional artists, but often we don't recognize that artists are at risk, they are persecuted, they are being deported. So the next question that is connected to artists from Afghanistan, for example, their situation in Finland, from the government's side, there has been no recognition of the fact that artists are at risk, they are in danger. France is the only country in Europe, alongside Germany, that are officially, publicly recognizing this. We have 600 professional artists on our lists. The field of art has, in other European countries, become very active in opening up their institutions. Volksbühne in Marseille also. We visited their cultural center, and they were complaining that they have only 50 artists in their residence apartments, and so on. So, of course, we are now involved with the cuts, and that's understandable that that is the priority. But we need to remember that in order to have applicants, professional artists from other countries, we have to keep our borders open and recognize that artists need protection when they're faced with such situations. And in connection with the cuts, the way Sweden, France, Germany in this situation have increased their resources, and in France some of those funds are directed to artists coming from elsewhere. In Germany, 10 million has been invested in receiving artists from Afghanistan. So we have to remember that in order to have a diverse society, we need more great artists from elsewhere within the borders of our countries. So wonderful if you are starting negotiations with the Finnish Immigration Service. That is more than necessary. Hello. Thank you. My name is Henri Tervo from the Arts Promotion Center. This is, I think, my first public speech in my current role, so I'm a bit nervous for a second. But the question on the other side of the row here requires some consideration. What does this situation with the cuts look like? Yes, apologies, I will slow down. Inclusiveness in everyday life, this is what it's all about. I will take this into consideration. So in the Arts Promotion Center, the cuts are going to be directed at many instruments, many different instruments. So artists, members in different committees are considering recruitments, and they will be analyzing how these cuts will be visible. And after the first comments, it seems very clear that these committees collectively have to consider in a very new way what are the priorities in this situation and where does the responsibility lie in the collective decision-making. I would assume that as we move towards decision-making through the current application period, there will be very fundamental discussions about what to remember, what do we need to still hold on to that are crucial to the field of arts and culture. A second thing is that we have been faced with these very concerning cuts, but we have to remember that not everything is in one group. So our grant system, 545 artists will still receive their grants, and the decisions stay. This artist grant system has little by little recognized the different aspects related to diversity, and they are able to identify artists with different various backgrounds, and this is becoming more evident in the reports. So more and more these diverse artists are being included, and they are receiving their income through the artist grant system. And here we are in front of the most basic question: how in that system are we able to evaluate and recognize, identify those artists in a correct way? I have to be cruel now. I think we could continue this discussion for a long time. But Riitta Kaivosoja says a few words, and then we take a small break. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm sure I will not say the final word here, but since you were asking about the impact of the cuts, in Finland we have the state cultural budget. We have to remember the structure of cultural funding. Culture and arts receive most of their money from purchased products, tickets, entrance tickets, and so on. So as consumers, we consume culture. On second place, we have municipalities and cities who fund culture and these activities more than the state, and state comes in the third place. So the state's cultural budget this is all a bit relative, a bit under 600 million euros a year. This is a difficult, complicated case because on a European level, even though we've tried to figure out how to compare cultural budgets, it hasn't worked because in Finland, for example, euros connected to education, for example, are not part of it. Library funding is not part of it. It's library funding nowadays is part of the municipal state subsidy funding. So what we can say, it's a little less than 600 million. And traditionally, more than half of that has come from the gambling industry, the Veikkaus, which is our gambling monopoly here in Finland, and that income has dramatically decreased. It was more than 1 billion in 2016 for the first time, and then until 2020 it was on a fairly good level, but in 2019 it was more than 1 billion. And we also had Fintoto and Raha-automaattiyhdistys. So these three entities together, now they are fused to the Veikkaus Oy. So we only have one entity, company, that organizes gambling games, and their profits were more than 1 billion in 2019. It decreased by several hundreds of euros in 2020. And the state has compensated this in a significant way. This year, it has been almost a full compensation, and last year it will be 330 million euros, and in 2023, 306 million euros. So with many millions of euros we have compensated, but next year it won't be in full compensation any longer, and it will slowly decrease until 2023. And this creates the problem. And this targets half of the state's cultural funding, arts funding. We have many functions that will not be facing cuts. The artist grants and the other art grants, no cuts to the state subsidies there. The artist pension system won't receive any cuts, and many other targets as well. But we are forced, we have planned how those cuts will be directed next year. We haven't done this with a cheese grater. Instead, we have selected some functions will be cut by 50%, some with 25%, some won't receive any. Then there are some 3%, 4%, 5% cuts. So in this reality is where we are. And since this was now published on Tuesday, Minister Kurvinen organized a big event, and that has started this discussion. And it is very good that we are discussing the funding for culture and how to develop it. This is part of the next year budget proposal for the parliament by the government, and different committees, especially the financial and the educational committee, will deal with this in the parliament. And in December, usually just before Christmas, we will receive the decision. In the government, the additional budget is being also still handled. So we will see about this autumn. This is the big picture. Thank you. Thank you. With these words, we will take a break for 10 minutes, and we will come back at 11:42.
Jatketaan iltapäivän ohjelma.
We will continue with our program, and we still have a very interesting piece before the lunch. And please, I will ask here to join me translator, writer, journalist, and a future colleague of mine, Koko Hubara. Please join us. And we'll now continue with the round table discussion. So these are actually 4 square tables that we have here, not round tables.
Mulla on tämmönen kuuluu.
Can you hear me? Good. I'm like a Madonna. I'm about to sing something for you. No, I will not sing to you, no. Welcome to this part, which is the round table discussion. As Mike said, we have square tables, no round table this time, but I don't think that really matters to us. My name is Koko Hubara. I'm a writer, journalist, perhaps most known by the media establishing Brown Girls Media. And this way, I'm now the first non-white editor-in-chief in Finland since 2017. So that was the historic event, first time ever in Finland. But before that, I want to thank all the previous speakers for their very important points they made. And many, as said, are very personal points, not just related to our work life, but it is about our survival and about our existence. Therefore, you can never exclude that and say that it's only about culture, this is only about arts. We talk about also immigrants, non-Finnish born people, but still, if you think of the statistics today, I'm actually born Finnish person myself. I just am not white Finn, I'm a brown person, and quite often being as such having a race and sort of as a definition. So it's another piece to this discussion, I would say. But anyway, today is not my lecture on the question of brown girls or anything like that, but we're going to have a great gathering of people. They're experts, and we have 1 hour for this. Each of them will first have an opening statement, 5 minutes or so, and after that we'll have a discussion on the report and also other thoughts that people had on the report. And we will also discuss how we can all now proceed, move forward. And hopefully at the end we have time for questions from the audience or comments from the audience. So I will now invite the panelists. So please take any place you want to. We have 6 great people joining us. And of course, you can introduce yourselves and your organization yourselves. So please take some water when you take your places. So let's go in this order. We'll start directly from my left. So who are you and what do you do? And some first thoughts, and we'll later then get deeper into the discussions about the report as such. But please introduce yourselves. Please, go ahead.
So shall I start then
Yes,
with what I have
please.
to say? Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ruby. I'm the chairperson of Globe Art Point. All the views that I discussed today are the views of Globe Art Point, not mine personally, maybe a few lines here and there. But Globe Art Point exists to advocate the rights of foreign-born professional artists and cultural workers who have made Finland their home. GAP is an umbrella organization, and our members are art and cultural institutions that consist of foreign-born artists and cultural workers. GAP works on 3 main pillars: GAP advocacy, GAP info, and GAP lab. Through our advocacy work, we are an active part of cultural and political decision-making and development processes in Finland. Through GAP info, we collect, mediate, and distribute information. And finally, through GAP lab, we develop and sustain bridges between artists and cultural workers, as well as art and cultural institutions in a real-life setting. GAP worked extensively in the making of the Art, Culture and Diverse Finland report for 1 year. Our previous board, led by Cheda, who spoke so beautifully earlier today, dedicated a lot of time and effort in various stages of the report making. This project involved the entire GAP board as well as the GAP team. Our association was instrumental in distributing information about the 3 thematic workshops to foreign-born artists and cultural professionals. The final report was also disseminated by us to the Finnish arts and culture community. Our vision for the next 2 years is to focus on employment and professional development within the arts and culture sector. As the report mentions, art and cultural organizations should identify, acknowledge, and actively eliminate discriminating structures and recruitment practices. Art and cultural professionals who have moved to Finland already have much knowledge and skills when they arrive. However, we believe that conditions should be created for improving the knowledge and skills required for work and career advancement. Keeping this in mind, Globart Point is producing a 2-day-long art conference in 2022. The GAP Art Summit aims to create a dialogue between all actors of the Finnish art and culture sector. The event focuses on career development, self-empowerment, and community building. The event will have a series of panel discussions, workshops, where every person participating will be able to engage, learn, and even contribute their ideas back in this forum. We look forward to meeting you all on 21st and 22nd April 2022 at the GAP Art Summit to be held at Lukan, Helsingfors. Thank you.
Hei vaan kaikki, mä olen
Hello to all of you. I'm Reetta Hautamäki, and I'm head of combinations Finnish Film Foundation. I can explain to you what the foundation does if you don't know the foundation. And we're here to promote the Finnish film industry, and we get from the lottery proceeds, the money goes to production and filming and distribution of films. So also to cinemas and buying equipment, different projects, and all of that is needed. In addition to that, we're also in charge of Finnish film international promotion at festivals, and we promote, of course, internationally all Finnish filmmakers and films. Of course, we collect a lot of data information. We have statistics that we create, and we want to communicate actively to a wide, extensive audience about all this. And of course, it's public money that we are distributing, so we have an obligation to make sure that the Finnish film industry reflects the actual society of Finland, so that we have all groups of audiences, something that they can identify with, and everybody has equal access to tell their story in the form of a film. We're not telling stories on somebody else's behalf, but the makers can share their story. And about the diversity work in this industry, there has been a general discussion in Europe that has been quite active throughout the last few years. And before that, it was more about equality, and that was gender equality. And today, it is more extensive discussion on all groups that are underrepresented. An action has been taken this year. There's now European-wide New Dawn Fund, where the Finnish Film Foundation is involved as well, to help network. I'm sorry. I'm speaking too fast. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm always sort of talking. I will now slow down. So I said there's a European-wide New Dawn Fund that has been established, and the objective of the fund is to help the filmmakers to network and to promote their projects so that there will be productions. And we, in concrete terms, fund projects so that there will be from 5 to 10 productions annually. And either the screenwriter, producer, or production comes from a group that has been discriminated. So these steps have been taken at the European level, but later I can come back to explain our Finnish industry and then the Finnish steps. Hello to you and Anttila, and I will ask Koko. I'm from Direct Channel National Museum. Do you want us now to just introduce and then come back to the actual keynote? Yes, few words only, introduction, then a few words, and we go deeper into this later.
museon näkökulmasta.
From the perspective of the Finnish National Gallery, I also, of course, represent the museum field in general. The Cultural Heritage Museum and Art Museum are partly similar and partly they differ. We've talked a lot about artists today, but also I want to take some perspectives into the cultural heritage. And the Finnish National Gallery we cooperate in developing the whole museum field, but I'll get back to these topics in a moment. Thank you. Hello, my name is Aleksi Malmberg. I think today we have heard a lot of very significant contributions, and I want to thank the working group for this report that I think guides us in the right direction in this work. I have personally had different roles in the cultural field, in the free art sector, and in organizing festivals. And I've also been in Brussels doing work to enhance networking between different artists. And now I am working as the intendant at the Helsinki City Orchestra. Also, because the roots, DNA, identity of the Western music starts from the courts, from the church. It all starts from the roots of the European white culture, and there's a lot to deal with regarding that history. And I believe that us who have more opportunities for that also bear a big responsibility. And for that, we have started a project a year ago regarding those who history has forgotten. So we want to bring forward those people who have been forgotten or silenced throughout history. We want to talk about actually diversity and not the cuts of this week, but it is connected to this topic because it feels very painful that these cuts are directed to so many actors. If work is not accessible or we withdrew funds from small publications, for example, and large organizations are left outside of the cuts, this will make the drift larger between us, and it will make the work difficult for everyone. Many institutions and organizations have a lot to learn, and we, I have to admit, are quite slow in many ways. We need people to speed us along. We need a way to work together in a different way, and this is why these cuts are so concerning and against the spirit of this report. I think now it's time to roll up our sleeves, like Seda so well put it. Part of that work in the Helsinki Cultural and Leisure Time Service Strategy work, a very similar type of work that is this action plan that will be created based on this report. Kati Suomelainen Petrosa is leading that work, and we may talk about that a bit more in a moment. And I hope that today these challenges, we shouldn't avoid them, but I hope that we remember other things as well regarding the future. The Helsinki City Cultural Vision Working Group, I was leading that with, as Pasi Saukkonen was part of this other working group. We talk about diversity in that vision in several points, and two most important points, I feel, are on one hand the perspective that hopefully in 2030 we won't have any room for racism or discrimination in unequal treatment in Finland and in the arts and cultural sector. And the second perspective is that everyone in Helsinki living here, every Finn, every foreign background person would have the chance to be heard, to be seen, to participate, and to feel connected, to feel like part of a community without being demanded of being like the majority.
David Kozma. I'm here to represent New Theatre Helsinki project. I'm really sorry. I'm very bad in these discussions and I'm very emotional. I would like to talk a bit more a bit later, but now because we've been talking so much about budget cuts and we are here because of this report, I would like to remind that it would be good to talk more on the report and on the cultural diversity, and then also at the lunch maybe we could talk more about the budget cuts. Because if we have to talk about budget cuts, we could point out that there was this discussion last year when the report has came out that the ministry was proposing to the government to put 1.5 million euros to implement the findings of the working group, and it was kind of the first thing what was cut out in the discussions the government was talking when they were setting up the budget for 21. So that's it for about the budget cuts, and let's hope we can talk more about cultural diversity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Arlene Tucker, and I have long black hair past my shoulders, dark eyes, freckles that cover my face and especially across my nose, and I'm wearing a floral shirt with blues, reds, and greens. So I'm here as part of Culture for All Service, and I'm an artist, educator, and diversity agent. And we have many diversity agents and diversity trainers in the audience today. And the first group of 11 diversity agents in Finland graduated in 2019. And the course debuted in the same year and was part of the Avaus projects happening between 2017 and 2019. These were run by Culture for All Service in cooperation with Globe Art Point and the Center for Cultural Policy Research Kupare. The aim of the project was to support the equal participation of non-Finnish born cultural workers and artists in the Finnish arts and culture sector. And I'm so happy to have been part of the first diversity agent course in 2019, and currently I'm the coordinator for the Diversity Agent 2.0 course. Diversity agents support and facilitate the implementation of anti-racist practices into the workplace, in the art and culture sector, as well as in daily life. We do this through consultancy work and giving lectures and workshops, as well as through our own work, expertise, and artistic practice. So, for example, diversity agents can help in the development of an organization's equality and non-discrimination plan. Our diverse backgrounds and artistry strengthen the extensive network we are able to reach because we have the knowledge as to how to speak with one another and understand each other. Having tools as to how to address and create space for change and accountability is one way to work towards an anti-racist agenda. In the Diversity Agents 2.0 course, we provide the space and opportunity for 10 participants working as artists and culture workers to strengthen and advance their anti-racist practices. We've been doing this by having active dialogue with guest speakers in the field, and as we hold lectures and seminars and workshops, and also the participants will facilitate an online clinic with an arts and culture organization based in Finland. So this will give them practical tools and experience on how to work with different organizations when supporting them on building in anti-racist practices into their office and community. By creating a mutual space, a mutual safer space, challenges can be addressed, and the willingness to be accountable will be more in place. From here, the diversity agents will have their unique voice heard, as well as develop their technique on how to support the collective us in creating a more diverse, inclusive, equitable, and accessible society. The program is to hopefully allow everybody to take part in culture on their own terms, whether they are in the audience as a cultural worker or as an artist. In addition to understanding DEI concepts, the work also involves recognizing one's own biases, how we make assumptions, what our needs are, what our feelings are. As our awareness grows, I feel that we can be more empathetic, understanding, and build an accountability with our choices and actions. I believe that everybody needs to do the work, a lot of work to be done in order to build a more equitable society and to stop structural racism. Working with other diversity agents and my colleagues at Culture for All Service, I felt personally very welcome, and everybody's coming from a place of wanting to grow and co-create. So this is the first step when tackling structures and ideologies that are painful and uncomfortable. Thanks.
Kiitos kaikille napakoista avauspuheenvuoroista.
Thank you everyone for these concise contributions, and also on my behalf, thank you for the working group. The report was extremely clear, and it shouldn't be difficult to move from words to action. So let's start talking about the report. So how did you feel about the report? What kind of ideas and thoughts came to you? What do you feel were the type of things that are easy to start implementing immediately, start affecting people's lives? And which measures do you think will be challenging, where perhaps we need more resources, perhaps other type of resources than just financial? Any obstacles that you identified? I thought that at this point the discussion could be fairly free. Someone can start, and if I'll try to referee if it becomes a debate. Who wants to start? Go ahead. Yes, I'm happy to start. I thought about the topic for this panel discussion. What has been done in cultural institutions and in our sector and in the field of museum field? We have done a lot, of course, and Pasi mentioned that cultural institutions are slow, and I'm sure that is true. Many of these questions have been in our discussions since 1980s in relation to diversity. And the question, how do we learn how to deal with it? It has taken a lot of time, and these last couple of years, these things have become part of our everyday work, paying attention to diversity. From the perspective of my own field, migrants and artists, actors with foreign-born backgrounds are part of the big entity that is connected to everything we do in our work. And now the work of museums, they are preserving cultural heritage and also defining cultural heritage. By selecting and making decisions, we are defining cultural heritage. So diversity is at its core. And today, what we take into account even more than before is that we are preserving and saving things, and we take into account the different types of cultural heritage and the different areas of it. That is very important in Finland. And in our everyday work, more and more so, we do these things together. Cultural characteristics, cultural communities, people who represent those communities. We do this together. We have understood this principle, and in our everyday work, it is more and more a core part of it. We cooperate, for example, with Roma culture. We perform it. We present it together with the Roma people. We also cooperate with Sami people. And also how foreign-born people integrate into Finland in the museum. This is about cooperation. And I would also like to mention that in this report, something that is quite easy to include in museum work is about integration. Museums are involved in integration processes, but I do see that there is even more potential there. What is needed for integration? What are all the steps and events along the way? It's a lot about the question that we don't only do integration work with people who are integrating. We do this work with the whole of society. Information, education, knowledge about other cultures is significant, and museums need to present that. Then questions that I have personally considered as our population becomes more and more diversified. The number of foreign-born people, migrant people, the development in Helsinki is speeding up. If we as a national cultural institution are providing background to this, we allow people to find their own cultural heritage. Now, in our work, with everyone who is here, the background is no longer here in Finland. So we have to understand, how do we allow in museums other people with other backgrounds from elsewhere to access their cultural heritage? So these types of questions are the kind that we think about actively in museums, and we also act to further these questions.
David, did you have your hand up, and then Alex as well?
What Pasi was saying about the 90s, and we should be thankful that Finland was very much reacting to the fact that immigration and another kind of wave of new people were arriving to Finland, and Finland has reacted to it. But I think that is a very problematic moment, because Finland was in a full crisis. It was going through an economical crisis, and all the immigration policy was built on this crisis. So I would say that all the basis, when we are talking about immigration and immigration policies, it's a crisis moment, and all the things that were put in or developed at that moment were to kind of face and to include in that crisis. And from that moment, we always build on that like not healthy base. And if we want to step forward, we should have a moment zero. And I think this report could give us a moment zero, at least in cultural field, to go back and see what has happened, and also how we can go from here on. Because there is a lot of dirt came up from the 90s until here. There is a lot of mistrust from both sides, a lot of discrimination, a lot of exclusion. But still, funny enough, we are talking about taiten moninaisuus and kulttuurinen moninaisuus and kielisen moninaisuuden edistäminen and this kind of stuff. We are in a two official language country, and still these two languages are not cooperating. They are like two different entities. And I'm talking with two Finnish citizens. One is a Finnish speaker, the other one is Swedish speaker, and they are speaking English between each other because they don't speak each other's language. And I think here is that if this is the base, then how me coming from Romania or Jada from Turkey could participate in this, that the two citizens of the basic citizens of this country, they can't communicate between each other. They have to have a third language. And I think here we should be very honest, that in this room probably all we agree that cultural diversity and the fast change of the society is a fact, and we have to react to that. But when we step out from this room, does it care anybody about it? Is it in the Ministry of Economy somebody who will state that, hey, wait a moment, that 1.5 million, it is a important thing to go forward in this issue? There is nobody, because everybody, it will be the Finnish or the Swedish. I've been talking with somebody from the Ministry of Economy. They said there is no foreign speaker a person working there. There was maybe one practitioner 5 years ago. Who will represent or who will put to the table that, wait a second, ho. Before cutting, what do we cut? We are talking about sustainability, but we don't invest in that sustainability. We are all a project grant country. Everything, it's 1 year, half a year, 3 months, 2 months, 2 years. How do we want to get forward? We want to get forward with 2 months project grant, 10 euros, and we expect that this will gonna be diamond. If we want something, we have to invest in it. And we have to have the trust that this thing, it's not coming back in 10 days. It will gonna come back in 10 years. But this country, if you want to develop forward, and as Eric was saying now in the break, that if you want to have an economical growth, we have to have more people here. We have too little people in this country. And you want or not, you like it or not, you can hate me, you can come and beat me up in the lunch. I'm out there. This is a reality, and you can't ignore that. That still we are having in these reports and in Pasi's beautiful dia, word migrant. People are to settle. We are not. This is not a perpetuum mobile that people are just hanging out until the end of the world. No, when people are moving, they will gonna stop, and we have to recognize that stop. It means that they are going to be here, and you can't ignore this relocation of people. That's it.
Meillä on reilu
We have about 10 minutes or so before we need to then have some questions from the audience, so we need to proceed, please. Very important and very strong what you said. And I want to actually highlight this moment zero that you raised. That felt important. And also the other point you made, that we just can't continue with these grants of 2 months or projects that are 4 months or 6 months. And I would say this is also the point of the report. And main point, at least for me, was the mainstreaming idea of having more permanent, constant work. It's not project-based thing that we do when we talk about diversity. Just previously, Director General Rita Kaivosoja talked about mainstreaming, and she said, and sometimes it is challenging, and that is true. There are also other things that are simultaneously out there that need to be mainstreamed, like sustainable development, as one of example, or climate change and all measures around it. And I do wish that we don't think that these are separate entities when you think of diversity or climate change, but I would say we should have a systematic approach. And also the UN 2030 agenda is there to make sure that this is an entity. There are interlinked topics, and we need to tackle all of them. Okay, you ask what is the difficult part or easy part of the report to implement? And I would say the systematic approach. When you have that approach, the easiest and most difficult thing is that it's not the big question to talk about money. It's about changing your mindset, and we need that change of mindset. That is doable, and it's easy. Just think differently. But to be honest, think of my work life. As a director, even if I do think differently compared to the past, it is scary for people because I have a bigger chance to fail when I do things in a new way compared to all things that are already done the same way. So I would say this is the most difficult part. Can I continue? Yes, please go ahead. I actually really liked the concrete proposals made by the report. And I was very happy to see that film industry has already taken these steps, so that we are creating statistics, we have communication in place already. But the challenge for me in the film industry now was, I admit, that the authorities, public institutes, they have the main responsibility of any change and its implementation. And if you think of film sector, we have, of course, schools, film schools. We need to make sure that students have diverse backgrounds as they enter our schools. And the public funders like us or like Taike will make sure that the distribution of funds, it is on equal footing. But there is sort of a long career that you can make. And there are different gatekeepers. And these gatekeepers are individuals. So first you need to get a traineeship in the film industry. You need to have contacts in place to get work. And then you need to promote your career to a place where you can do your own projects or set your own company. And that is the day when you decide that you can get to the public funding. So the organizations can do a lot. But it's not crystal clear for me personally. How do we reach to the mind of people? It is not like somebody is really resisting any of the values. No, I would say majority of people agree. These are all very positive things that need to be promoted. But I'm guilty of something because I am very passive in supporting values. So what do I do in my life to promote things? I don't do much myself. But we all have our own circle of power where we can do even small steps and changes. So I think there we need to find a solution that works better. Thank you.
Would Ruby or Arlene like to comment?
Well, a lot of things going on in my mind right now because it's thinking about what Jada was saying and that this is personal, thinking about Sepire, when is this going to be put into action? Because this is a beautiful, concise set of guidelines, but it is different how it is implemented. And actually, bosses and supervisors, they can have these guidelines, but who's accountable? And it's a different thing when I mean, there are many moving parts with advocacy, but then also advocacy work, and then I'm also thinking of daily life in society. You know, so you can read one thing and agree with it, but how you're using it and how you're building it into your everyday action is something different, and I see that contradiction a lot. So,
would you like to?
Okay, so what have we been talking about at GAP? Because we have so many discussions in office about various topics, and one of them this was me, Alex, and Jana talking in office, that Finland has this image of being the happiest country in the world. So when people come from outside, it's like you're coming to some utopia state. And when they come here, they realize it's not utopia. There are a lot of challenges, especially if you're foreign born, you can't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, and it's a shock to your system. So I think the report in some ways talks about these problems that foreign born professionals, whether they are the artists, cultural workers, even there are business people like me, face when they come here. And the report is easy. This is just from a report perspective. It's easy to grasp. It's easy to read. Everyone can understand what it says. But yes, there is this thing where I think people have to know from before, even they come here, that there is pros and cons of every country, and it's there even in Finland, even if it's the happiest country in the world, and I feel very happy living here. So I don't have anything against it. What GAP wants to focus on, or what GAP has worked on, that is very particular to this report. Again, our focus is employment and professional development, because everyone who comes here, whether you're Finnish, whether you're foreign born, you want to have one sustainable source of income. And whether if you're an artist, not an artist, you want to have a job that will pay you fair wages and a salary. And I think this is what is lacking in the creative sector, that artists don't get paid. They have 2-3 jobs, they are cleaners, they work in restaurants, and then they do art when they have free time. And they are not working as full-time artists. And I think this is what needs to really, really change in some way, that they have opportunity to earn a living through what they have studied and what is their skill. Now, GAP does help in some ways because, of course, we also have limited funding, and I will come to funding a little later. We do have the GAP Lab program where we employ foreign-born and Finnish artists in a particular project, and we pay them a salary. But that could be for 1 week, it could be for 1 month. It's still at a very small scale. Now, if we want to have that at a large scale where we can have more artists and give these kind of opportunities to more people because they are getting employment through that, then we need more money and more funding Now, even when I feel that even when we apply for grants and we get grants, but the other thing that I think every organization and association, even if you're a not-for-profit, has to be aware of is that you need your own sustainable source of income, that you have to develop, like any startup, you have to develop your own revenue source. And I think this is what we are trying very hard to do at GAP right now, that we create a sustainable source of income for ourselves, and then we get funding. And both of this together helps us to make better programs for the creative industry. And I hope we are able to do that in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Elina, would you like to say something? A comment on what Alex has said. You talked about sustainability.
We understand each other, but around us are people who don't really understand about the cultural matters. So I was wondering, maybe I changed to Finnish now, but
I consider that we need to get used to talk about this, like Agenda 2030 objectives. They cannot be reached without any cultural equity and equality, and that can be provided by diversity in culture. And thus we have ability to adjust ourselves and see different cultures and live as a community, as a society, to seek towards the objectives of the agenda. We need to be able to combine things. They are not parallel things, they are combined. Throughout the whole morning session, I felt that we talked about the report, the work is a final stage, but I would say it's part of the future. We continue from this, and there might be a new discussion upcoming. Do I interpret you correctly that in the report, at least David's report or comment said, and others as well, mentioned that there is something about the report. There is something that perhaps is not explicitly said out loud, something that we should be able to say aloud and go outside our comfort zone to really reach what Sevid said, that we need to get from words to action. So we are not part of the mainstream or majority. We are artists. We work in this field. And before we were having a professional career, since we were born, we have seen racism in all sectors. And we know that in all spheres of life, it is not just lack of good intention. It is a structural thing. We now have this ground zero, so this starting point to really start everything from scratch. So that is the question. Did I understand you correctly, that this is the way you want to proceed? And perhaps to now conclude, you could quickly bring up something. What should be said aloud and be formulated better? David, go ahead.
Sorry, just very short. And I will maybe comment on also Ruby's speech, that very much, and I remember Thomas Martikainen was saying that Finland sees people through their work, and because of that, newcomers are always seen as a possible problem that they have to be set in to a work mindset. And then, of course, where is the easiest? It is the places where the locals don't want to work anymore. And the newcomers are not watched as they would be in need of cultural well-being or mental or emotional well-being, that they are just watched as nice ants. They will come, they will do the work, and they will disappear. And I think this is not perhaps mentioned, that it should be, or it is a human right to have also if you are talking about equity and equality, then that means that also cultural rights and well-being, it is part of that. And when we are talking about offering this cultural well-being, then suddenly we're going to have all these cultural workers and artists who are now cleaners, whatever, unemployed people. They would become artists and cultural workers because there will be the work, it will going to exist. But we don't have the triggers at the moment. The institutions don't have open calls. I'm talking about from a theater point of view, that there are no project open calls, or actors are not hired on any projects. How do you want to change something when every institution works on a feudal base? That my theater or my institution, it is my own kingdom. And then if you don't open your institutions, how perhaps change will going to happen?
I'd like to just add to that too, that there's a loophole in the system as well, because, for example, on one of the slides it was saying, to have more possibility to learn Finnish. That's great. But then when everybody assumes that you don't speak Finnish, how are you going to speak the language if nobody's speaking to you? So you can learn it, but then using it and practicing it, or being recognized that that it is, that it doesn't have to. I'm talking about assumptions here, so.
Thank you. Haluaako joku jatkaa tästä?
Does anyone want to continue? Something that should be said aloud.
I want to say to what even David has been saying, that I think not only in Finland, because I left India many years ago and I lived in another country. So I was an expatriate there, and then I moved to Finland, and I've not been here for that long either. But I think every country has this fear of foreigners who come in, that they will take away their jobs, they will take away their resources. And I think that fear is there in every country for foreign-born people. One way, I think, to look at foreign-born people who move to another country is that, yes, you are asking them to integrate, and a lot of times they do integrate very well, but they also bring knowledge and expertise with them, which they contribute back to society, not necessarily taking away anything from any Finnish person. It's always adding to what is already there. And I think that's a mindset change, because every time you think that this person has come to take something away from me, and even for a foreign-born person like me, rather than thinking what I can get from Finland, I also have to think what I want to give to Finland. That is my own expertise and knowledge. And I think when that mindset changes and it comes together in this manner, then there is positive change and outcome. Then no one is seen as a threat, and there is more inclusion of this person into society. I think that is what I would add to this discussion. Yeah.
Onko vielä jotain
Anything else? Now you have the chance to say it.
Organized by New Theatre Helsinki. It's called Building Bridges, Concrete Actions Towards an Intercultural Theatre. You are very much welcome, and we are talking about concrete steps, how to open the theatre field into a more diverse and more intercultural cultural landscape. Welcome.
So you want to remind the people about the time?
It starts from 10 o'clock.
Sorry?
It starts at 10 o'clock. In the evening tomorrow. In the morning. Not in the night.
Hopefully not at 10 at night. That's a bit too late even for artists.
It will be perhaps more interesting to talk in the evening.
I think so. No, mutta sitten meillä on
And now we have opportunity for some questions or comments from the audience. I see somebody's raising hand there promptly.
kysymyksiä, joo.
Also some other questions coming online.
Erik Söderblom. My mother tongue is Swedish, but as a kind of friendly provocation, I now speak English. Because there is no translation from Swedish into either Finnish or English. We have seen today a moment where the diminished cultural budgets almost hijacked this discussion, and I myself as a gatekeeper, I realized that this is a kind of momentum right now where very easily in all organizations, instead of pushing this work forward, we are concerned with budget cuts, and somehow then think that this thing that we have here now can be postponed and be done later, as the budget cuts are now the most important thing. But I think this is wrong, because a bit like David said, one thing is that we will have these diminished budgets and lack of money from now until ever. It doesn't finish next year. It will go on for 10 years, for whatever. And exactly in this situation, now to cut the inclusivity work to be done later is a big fault, because actually this country is dependent on having more people here. How many kids we do from now on, we will never match the need of new people here to keep this country running. So as a matter of fact, what we are doing here now should be even more stressed and should be hurried up to really get this country to become a country where people from abroad can come and live and work. This is the only way to get this economic crisis to go away. So therefore, I wouldn't see this here now as a kind of separate extra project, like David said. It's a very core part of the sustainability of this country. So as I know that there are many gatekeepers here, and I have the same situation back in Espoo. I need to go there and say, I want to go there and say, this is the most important thing we can do now to have a better cultural budget in the future. Thank you.
So there's a question from the chat box. First of all, thank you for all the comments online. Unfortunately, we do not have the time to go through all of them, but it's a nice discussion going on here. Anyways, for the panelists, a short question. If you could all do one sentence request for a concrete action like Seda did. So if everyone could just suggest something small, concrete that could be done in the name of diversity.
Kuka haluaa aloittaa?
Who wants to start?
We've had, again, discussions about open calls and public tenders, and if they could be in English also. No one is saying that they have to only be in English, but they could also be in English. That will open it up to more applicants and make it more transparent to the foreign-born people living here. That would be my one suggestion, yeah.
My section is diversity training. We talk about changing the mindset, how to reach individuals who can make choices. So, like us, our employees had a training session this spring. Even you think something is self-evident, that is all clear to you personally, what does diversity mean to you? No, there are also new thoughts and discussions. So start with training in companies, in production. So I'm now talking about film industry, of course. I agree with you, Reetta. Yes, diversity skills are very, very important in cultural institutes. And also they are civic skills. So even at schools, this could be very present. And you need to propose what to do. Well, I'm also thinking what we would do next. And one thing where we must make a progress is, as Cultural Institute, the way we work, we can change that. So it's easier to integrate when you speak different languages. So multilingualism has been a challenge for us. And we have an opening of our report where it said that language problems or the managers think the language problem is a bigger issue than workers. So it could be possible that working multilingual system could be arranged and it could be better than it is today. And we need that approach so that we can get non-Finnish born citizens to these workspaces. As part of the thematic group on diversity, we had Kati and others who conducted a survey to those people involved in art sector who collaborate with the city's cultural department. And I would say there was main learning. It said that many foreign-born or non-Finnish language speakers can't speak to each other because they can't open that gate. They can't have even dialogue on what they do together with the artists in Helsinki region. So they don't understand each other. And if you choose your programming, they don't understand why was that selected to the program, why did you do that? So we need to have art that is heard and seen in the city. So I would say that would be that one sentence, so have dialogue. Open up a criteria for your decision making and empower.
We realized that one problem, what at least the performing arts is facing, it is that between the mainstream and the underground, there is nothing. There is big air. And then we are expecting that artists who are coming or moving to Finland, they would jump from nothing to the mainstream just like this. And to come in between, we are developing our concept with the fund of Finnish Cultural Foundation for 3 years, because we are a project country now, where we are trying to develop this concept there that will be a center for performing arts which would concentrate on cultural diversity. And that would work also closely with the existing institutions to collaborate and to grow the artist, to prepare the artist to get the mainstream, to become the mainstream. Because from nothing, mainstream, it won't stay nothing. Thank you.
Referral service, thinking about language as a way to advance the workplace, not as a deterrent, and that diversity must be visible on all levels, and opening the discussion for all parties to be part of the decision-making process. Yeah.
Kiitos. Onko vielä? Ehditäänkö vielä?
Anything else? Do we have the time?
Skeme Pellicer. I'm a visual artist and also a cultural worker, a diversity agent. A proud immigrant myself, daughter of a long line of immigrants. And one thing that I wanted to say before I go straight to my question is that how difficult it is sometimes to work with these themes when we cannot call things by their name sometimes. So, for example, just thinking about that we are talking about diversity, but at the same time we are talking about immigrant. Sometimes it's not the same. So, yeah. That is one thing that I wanted to say. My question, I guess it will be directed to Elina, because you are representing the Museum of Visual Arts. So my question is about this, how is cultural diversity presented, what is currently taking place. Okay, so are the museum's collection on permanent exhibition responding as a representation of the reality of the country's already cultural diversity and therefore able to preserve the richness?
Thank you for a question. I think I'll respond in Finnish. So that question was, I think, both for the National Museum and for museums in general. But I would say diversity, yes, it is visible, much more visible now than it was in the past. And this is my personal observation. And in my own work, we have seen this. We have new openings concerning, for instance, the cultural heritage questions, cultural communities, and also certain parts of culture are missing from our culture. If we go back in history, we recognize certain parts which have not been saved and preserved. So this is also true for today's preservation work. We try to observe around us things that we can now record and save. And it is also about having diversity in our exhibitions. And we have multiple projects. And there are different kinds of museums in Finland. And per capita, we have more museums than in other countries in the world. So it's not just one project where you can implement a total diversity, but all together we form a bigger picture that is more diverse picture of Finland. This I found important, and as we continue on this direction, we will hopefully have diversity in place, and we take that into account. It was very good what you said. We talk about diversity and then immigration, but these are huge things, and they do interlink. But diversity means so much more, and it means also individuals, our own experience of our time, of our history, and at individual level, that is a diverse vision. But we try to take into account this in the museums, and as I said, we're taking steps forward.
Kiitos kaikille.
Thank you all. Thank you all the participants and those who participate in the discussion of square tables. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. Can we still have one more question? Can we? I'm not in charge anymore.
Okay, is it on? Okay. Hello, all gatekeepers in Finland. If you get the email with a odd name, please answer it, open it, because there are so many times I hear, I have sent 5, 10 emails and nobody's answering. What is this? If you're gatekeepers, so answer the emails. You don't know how beautiful your life is going to be. I answered her email, and it has changed my life totally.
Okei, myönnetään, se oli tosi.
I admit that was an important point to make. And I have to say, brown girls' emails always go to junk mail because it's considered to be adult entertainment emails, I suppose, by Google. But anyway, thank you. Thank you, members of the panel, for these discussions. And there was a lot of concrete things that you brought up. So one cannot say in this room that I don't know what to do or I don't know where to go. Well, I can actually say we should perhaps go to have lunch. No? Sorry? No? No, we have to stay put? Thank you. I think we can leave at least.
Ennen kuin lähdetään
Before you have lunch, now it's a good time to repeat the work groups. If you're going to join us, you will see in your name tag a letter, and you will find your work group according to that. Here you have the division into work groups and also the name of the room where the workshop takes place. If you don't have any letter on your tag, you go to the cultural heritage workshops. So we're trying to put some guidelines, instructions. But if you find the letter and you are finished speaking and you're in a dialogue group, you will come here and please follow the signs on the walls. So in the hallways, you'll find signs as well in English, because there's an English work group as well. And if you don't feel certain, you go to the information desk to make sure and ask there which is your work group. Another point, those who have headsets, interpretation headsets, please put them back at the end of this morning session to the place where you got them from. And those who are online, it is time to go to your refrigerators, open the door of your refrigerator, and us here on site in Hakaniemi will now go to Lasiranta. So that is on the same floor, and it is the restaurant. And the food is offered, so you just show your face, and they will know they serve lunch, and they know who we are. And there are signs put up there, so you will find the tables. And let's now go and take seats on those tables. So let's continue our discussions, vivid discussions during the lunch. We have an hour and 10 minutes for the lunch, and we come back here at 2 o'clock sharp. So 2 o'clock sharp. And if you feel that you are lost, just check the space where you're going to go before you take lunch. Good. And those who are online will continue at 2 o'clock online. So those who are connected will continue at 2 o'clock. Bon appétit.